right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland, the best in anything, anywhere, or so we like to tell you. It is just, okay, so it's not just hot, which, I mean, we all know that it's hot. So it's hard not to talk about the heat. When last week we talked about how we doomed up the whole program by talking like politics at the beginning, but then it's like hard not to talk about the heat. And then like my neighbor town's on fire again.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved here, my north two neighbor towns burned down, but now my south town neighbor is about to burn down, and the fire's like 30 miles away from us, and like it's smoky here. And I know I look pleasant, of course, but really,
you always look pleasant.
I'm hot and sweaty and miserable, and I smell like death warmed over.
Yeah, same. Except not for the smoke part. But you know what? I mean, it really shouldn't be the same up here because this is the Pacific Northwest, well known across the world for being cool and dry, and we are like at the same latitude as Britain, basically. So we're basically in Canada.
But they're having their hottest days on record in England right now.
Yeah. And last week it was in the 90s here, and in England I think it's been about that much. Although actually I want to say this summer as a whole there have been a bunch of like 100-degree days in England.
Oh yeah,
which is insane. Yep. You know, they're none of their stuff is set up for that. But you know, I was thinking
fog is now like stank. It's now like it's stank from the tube.
Yeah, it's just
coming up. You know,
it's just aerosolized sweat.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, I was thinking the other day because I keep saying, you know, when talking about Seattle or about Britain or Canada or whoever, that like, you know, their infrastructure is not set up for it. You know, they don't have air conditioning. They're not prepared for heat waves. But the thing is, why aren't they at this point? Like, why aren't we here in Seattle prepared for heat waves? Because we've had a massive heat wave that's killed people every single summer for like the last 10 years. So what are we doing? Why doesn't everywhere have air conditioning yet?
Well, for the same reason that everywhere isn't have buildings to resist an earthquake. Nobody made them do it.
Yeah, well, that's
ultimately that's why that's why we live in houses, you know, at least when we lived in California, you know, that weren't going to come down in an earthquake, or less likely to.
Right.
It's because they were made to do it. They didn't want to spend the extra money out of the goodness of their hearts to give you air conditioning. You know, you have to demand it or pay more.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think
it's the American way, Kara.
Well, it's not just the American way. It's also the British way, apparently. Because
but they're doing things our way. You have to admit.
No, they are.
They got the idea from us. We started this.
We are, you know, the dysfunctional child of a equally dysfunctional parent. It's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's something very incestuous about our governments.
Yeah, well, really all the little, like the white colonial nations that Britain spawned have. But I like to think though that, you know, we're sort of the prodigal child of Britain. I think we're the ones that like takes after the parent the most and maybe even like surpasses them. And all the others, you know, Britain looks at Canada or Australia and it's like, you're living in my shadow, you know.
Right.
Never.
We joined the military, and Canada got like a liberal arts degree.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
totally get you.
Yeah.
I will say that all this heat and flooding and stuff, it makes me think of two things. It makes me think one terrible thing about humanity, and that is that, you know, for these past couple of years that I've seen fires go on on the West Coast in California specifically, you know, you get a lot of rhetoric of like people saying like, oh, they're burning because they're Dems, or they're doing this, that, and the other thing because they're against God. They're being smited from this earth. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's saying this. Of course, we have a terrible habit of like taking what the internet says and then saying that that's what they say, you know, and then having
you know, the biggest fringe crazies now represent
right, you know, and I know that's the case, but yeah. Now I'm wondering if there's fringe crazies in California who are going like, oh, those Kentuckians are being smited by science because of their waterness or something, if there's a bunch of hateful stuff out there. But the other thing that really makes me think is I'm scared enough of this global warming situation that I'm comfortable with a reset here. We're all having a really bad summer all the way across this country. I would like to see what the attitudes towards global warming are when we come out of this summer. And for those who have come across, man, we won't bring it up again. It's fine. You can switch sides all you want. It's cool. Welcome across. There will be no shaming. Let's just see how it works out. Because I think a lot of people are going to change their mind after this summer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know that this summer has been too much worse than last summer.
There seems to be an awareness going on. There seems to be I don't know. I think I might be mentally ill though. You ever feel like you're tapped into like the zeitgeist of society and think you know which way we're leaning?
Sometimes, but
are you also
I feel like
mentally ill?
Well, it's not that. I feel like I just have even less reason to think that like the opinions of my friends could ever possibly represent the opinions of like the world, because I know that I am.
Yeah, I really don't. I mean, I have like 4 people that I considered friends, or 5 people. And then outside of that, I have like bros from way back that I don't talk to all that often, although I wish I did.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm not a particularly social guy. It's more like remote viewing and a whole lot of watching TV. But not
so
Facebook.
You're remote viewing your friends. You're psychically divining the activities of your friends, but you're not talking to them.
I believe pretty much everything I read, which I feel makes me more of a discerning reader.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is funny, actually. I think, like, if you're thinking, what should I, as a dumb layperson, do with the information I get? That's probably, if it's that strategy versus try and, it's sort of the guess C every time on the multiple choice test strategy. And if you're dumb enough, maybe that's a good idea, because if you're trying to figure it out, you'll get the wrong answer. But right. I don't know, the global warming thing, I feel like it is becoming a lot more important on the left, but I will say, it's good to take a step back and look at like, what are the statistics? How important do people say this is? And very few Democrats have climate change as their top issue, but also that pretty much all Dems in the United States say that it's super important. But I think, there's also a big problem with polling on climate change specifically, because you can ask questions in the abstract, like, would you be willing to have more expensive gas to deal with climate change? Or, would you be willing to make this sacrifice to deal with climate change? Or a lot of studies just kind of ask, do you think more should be done on climate change? Right. And all of those questions really fall short of, they're fine questions, but how much does that correspond with people's actual reactions? Because as far as I can tell, whenever gas prices go up, everyone in the country loses their minds, and for good reason. It
affects practically everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's of huge importance. So it's like, yeah, it's tough to, I think, really get an accurate gauge on how people feel about climate change, and it's also tough to even get an accurate gauge on what people are thinking intellectually about climate change. And it's tough to get a gauge on what are the scientists thinking intellectually about climate change, because there's in fact some disagreement there in terms of questions like, how bad is this going to be? What does, a world that's 2 degrees hotter, 3 degrees hotter, 4 degrees hotter look like? Where are the biggest I guess there isn't actually much disagreement about what we need to do to mitigate it and where the troubles are, but the issues are like.
Well, there's a lot of disagreement on how to get that done. But first,
absolutely,
but
it's not science disagreement.
You don't think these past couple of years have changed a lot of people's minds?
I'll bet they have, but all I'm saying is I would like to look at the data, but I'm aware that the data on this is a little unreliable. So I'm hesitant to say. I'll bet it has. I'll bet you're right, but I'm hesitant to even really hazard a guess as to how much it's changed people's minds or how much that's going to matter.
Why are you saying that it's so unreliable?
Well, because
like
of the thing.
Don't go into the places that have bad opinions of this, or
no. Well, it's because of the stuff I just mentioned. It's because you can ask people all day long how they might feel about a specific change in their life,
right?
But you don't actually know how people are going to feel until the change happens and they are actually feeling the effects.
And yes, I totally remember you saying this, because this was the other half of what I was thinking about that. And there's really only two ways to fix it.
Yeah.
One is to make personal changes, and one is to throw a bunch of money at technology changing. Now, you could do some combination of the two, of course, but I kind of feel like we already did the first one, and we know that doesn't work.
Sure.
I feel like that's off the table. I feel like personally changing 350 million people's attitudes on how they live their lives in order to do this is officially off the table. It's obviously just not going to happen unless people's houses are burning down undeniably. So we need to figure out some sort of way to throw money at this problem. And that's a terrible thing to say. And I know a lot of people don't like that answer, but I think that's the only realistic answer. I don't know. I mean, declare war on it. Let's have the military work on it. And when they all get out of the military, they'll all have kick-ass jobs in the private sector working on all this stuff they helped to get up and running.
Yeah, the military does keep saying that climate change is one of our biggest security threats, which it freaking is. The number of wars that have started and are going to start in the near future due to climate change is insane.
And this wouldn't be our first war on an abstract idea. We declared war on terror.
Yeah. It's worth noting, though, that
love is a battlefield.
I've done a great deal of reading about this. I'm by no means an expert, but what my understanding of the situation is basically that we already have perfectly serviceable technology for replacing fossil fuels. The only thing is really just we need to replace our infrastructure with this new infrastructure, right? So that's really the only thing. And that's kind of what you were saying. It's like, so how do we make that happen? And it's like, well, all Congress would need to do is pass a bill that does that, basically. And then, you implement it over 10 years, over 15 years, over whatever. So you have to look at, why doesn't Congress do that? Well, the reason Congress doesn't do that is because Republicans don't believe in climate change. And in 2020, Democrats turned out in essentially their highest turnout ever. And that still netted us a 0-seat majority in the Senate. And the tiebreaker is Joe Manchin, who comes from a fossil fuel state. That is why we can't do anything on climate change. It's regulatory capture. It's, one major party, which is always going to be able to veto stuff in the government unless we have a supermajority, which practically never happens, is pretty much beholden to oil interests. So they've got us. They have taken control of our electoral system, and there's kind of this roadblock we're in now. I don't see that. Why would that go away? Why would we suddenly start doing stuff?
Effects to our economy, So one thing that
but that won't happen until it's way too late, right?
Right. Well, yeah, that's true. but maybe they can come up with a happy medium where the military industrial complex can stay on oil. Because I'm all right with that. I understand it might take them some extra years. It's not like we want to switch over to windmills and have windmill, basically. I was going to say something really sarcastic, but it's not like we want to switch over to possibly inferior military technology to protect us. So, I mean, of course, there's going to be a massive sector of our government that is still running on this stuff. And so there can be some baby steps off of there. But you're right. I mean, who's going to go for it? Who's listening? Who am I telling? I mean, why are we here?
It's so true. Yeah,
like tearing up, man. Why am I even here?
What are we going to do? We're going crazy.
Yeah. All right. It's blame it on the heat. Blame it on the heat and the smoke inhalation.
We're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. Is that what I'm hearing?
Hopefully there's something entertaining in the news. And if you report on all fires, man, I'm coming up there.
Okay. Well, do you like dead spiders?
More than living ones, yes.
All right, let's talk about dead spiders. Well, some engineers at Rice University came up with a new field of robotics called necrobotics. Necro meaning dead, of course. They basically turn dead spiders into robotics components. Sounds a little sketchy. Stick with me here. Basically, the way it works is that the carcass of a spider turns out to be a very good mechanical grabber and very good for micromanipulation tasks. And spiders are hydraulic. They don't have muscles. They basically have sort of a fluid chamber in their body that controls how their legs move. So basically, these engineers were like, can we just like get control of that fluid chamber? Just like with a needle that like sucks stuff into it or pulls stuff out of it, and thereby control the body of this dead spider and turn it into a robotics component? The answer, of course, was yes, and that it is much more effective than purpose-built machines for this, and also much less expensive.
I have multiple issues with this.
Sure.
For one, it sounds hella good, but ultimately what they built was a kid's claw machine with a dead spider on the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
But okay, so what's it called? The stem cells. Okay, yeah. So I understand that there's like some debate on stem cells because like you're taking like living material and you're turning it into other material and you're putting it in a person. It's all very, very weird, but at the same time, it kind of has to happen because we need this to start with. I'm not sure we need to start with a spider corpse for this one. I feel like this one could have just been built being inspired by the spider corpse and then building your own 3D printed, maybe. I don't know, lots of other things, but it seems a little weird that they're playing with dead things. That could easily not be dead things.
Yeah, I mean, according to the article, this is a superior way to solve the problem, which shows you how engineers
talk think. Like that gets us into a lot of trouble. As soon as people start throwing around the word superior and you're using other things, dead bodies.
No, I mean, it is. The value of this is probably overblown. It says in the article that, maybe this could be useful for other tasks, and maybe eventually we'll be looking at robots that have dead spider hands. Who knows? Like 100 little tendrils topped with dead spiders on the very end. Maybe other pieces.
Why robots? I mean, there are people who need hands. Maybe they're going to have the dead spider hands.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Tarantulas. I don't know that would be sort of the right size, but yeah, you could have necroprosthetics.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't see. You
don't love it. Yeah.
No, I'm not on board with this. I think it's weird. So there's this commercial on TV for this stuff called Prevagen, right? And I don't know what I'm watching that I get all these old people commercials, but are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so Prevagen is like this drug that like makes your brain work better. And nice. Like in the commercial, they just gloss over information. You know how they gloss over like side effects.
Sure,
And
yeah.
this one, they like gloss over how they got to it. They're just all scientists discovered that in jellyfish is a thing that can be used on humans to do this. And I'm just all, what were you doing? Poking around in a jellyfish in the first place for looking for this. This is weird. Don't gloss over that part. I feel like you're burying the lead. The deal here is not that jellyfish parts make us smarter. The deal is that this dude was playing with the dead jellyfish and snorting it or whatever. I don't know how they got to the point where they said, we found this thing in this jellyfish that we're going to try taking. Are you in? You know?
I don't know either. I'll bet it's actually not that weird when you hear the story, but it might be like this story where the lead to the story is basically just this scientist saw a dead spider in the hallway and is like, hey, I wonder. Which speaks to an ill mind. I love it. I want to meet this person. I want to be their friend.
Right. But not a roommate.
Not a roommate, probably.
Yeah, right. That's where we draw the line. We could be friends, but
yeah.
If you lose your house, you're gonna have to go back to your parents.
I just want to follow them around with a video camera. I don't know,
right.
But yeah, and this is something where like the headline is scientists are turning dead spiders into necrobots, and it's like that's a very good headline. The story isn't as good as the headline. The story
it's rare though that you get clickbait that's so factually accurate though.
Yeah, I mean, it is
pretty
closer
much
to
describes the story pretty well. There's no like sales pitch there. They just sell this stuff sells itself right on. Put it on the front page.
Yeah, I think what people would naturally tend to assume is that the necrobots are like animated by a chip or something.
Yeah,
but
they do that though to mice.
They do that to mice.
Well,
they do weird stuff to mice.
Right.
If I don't know, I mean, you've seen pictures of mice with wires in their head. They also do an ear
growing off its back
on the back of a mouse. Yeah,
that's a new segment. The new Radio Wasteland segment is they do weird stuff to mice.
They do. They really do.
This week on They Do Weird Stuff to Mice.
I'm not sure it comes up enough for that to be a weekly segment, but maybe. I need a source. I need an inside track on the weird mice stuff. I'm sure
there's already a Facebook group. There's something for everybody on the internet.
Look, there are sacrifices I'm willing to make for this show, and Googling weird mouse Facebook group is not
right. Totally.
I'm not willing to go that far. Let's talk about the Loch Ness Monster.
All right.
So the headline is Loch Ness Monster existence plausible, scientists say, which I think is misleading as heck. Because what the article says basically is that scientists have discovered the plesiosaur lived in fresh water as well as salt water, which is a huge advancement because for a long time we thought it was only a saltwater creature. This is, a dinosaur we've known about for at least 100 years. So there's that. It's possible. I don't know if that one little thing makes a dinosaur living in the lake plausible. I don't think it does. I think, maybe you've chipped away at one little area of implausibility, but my problem with the Loch Ness Monster was never, hey, that doesn't add up. This creature only lives in salt water. That's not why I wasn't a Loch Ness Monster believer. My problem was there's no evidence. There's a few grainy photos. Pretty much all of which were revealed to be hoaxes at some point or another. There's a bunch of eyewitnesses who, say, who have no proof with them, and are tourists who probably saw a branch.
Right.
So,
is this how shocking is this information? Because, okay, so you got the plesiosaur lives in salt water.
That's fine.
Now,
or lives in fresh water.
I'm pulling from my mind here, but something like 99.6% of all life that has ever existed on this earth is extinct now, of all the different species.
Right.
Now, this number was somehow, and sure, maybe it's 77. I don't know. Either way, more than half. Go with that.
It's a big number.
This number was somehow extrapolated. It's not like we discovered them all.
No.
But we discovered enough to the point where we go, now we know. And so, like, we know there's freshwater dolphins, and we know there's like a gosh dang rodent with a duck bill and spines. I mean, who was really sitting there thinking, but a freshwater plesiosaur, that's ridiculous. This could never exist. We have pink freshwater dolphins, of course, but plesiosaurs in freshwater, that's preposterous. I don't know.
Yeah, that's my thing with a lot of cryptids is people say, well, it's completely possible. We're really just talking about a big ape here for Bigfoot. And it's like, yes, but where is it? That's the sticking point.
The issue is not that it never existed. The issue is that it currently doesn't.
Right, exactly. Because the dinosaurs are extinct. So if you tell me, hey, no, they're not extinct, there's one in the lake, then I'm going to need to see the dinosaur. Like, it's not unreasonable for me to say, okay, show me. Right?
Yeah. I do like the Loch Ness Monster. I like the river monsters. And
yeah.
They're so cool.
I like them.
I feel like maybe I was preyed on as a kid, because there was lots of cool little kid stuff having to do with that.
Yeah. Did you ever... There's a book I would always check out from the library. Like, it would constantly be checked out, and it would constantly be checked out to me from the Reading Library. That was just like basically a picture book with weird monsters. And, you can check out anything from the library. And it professes to be an educational book, despite being completely full of, just very, very untrue facts.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're a kid, you don't know the difference. You take it home and you're just like, wow, I can't believe that the Loch Ness Monster is real. That's amazing.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's sad that
I like to believe there might be a little bit of magic, plus Primeval. I've seen the show Primeval. I have to tell you, though, the weirdest part about that thing that you just told me was that your parents took you to the library.
They did. Yeah.
Well, that's weird because I was a regular library goer as a kid, and I was a weird kid for going. None of my friends were going to the library. It was just my mom taking me. So now I'm like super shocked that you, who could basically be my offspring age-wise, I don't know. Do you know your parents? Could I be your dad? But you get my point. I think
you're like a generation later.
You're like a generation later, and you must be a really weird kid.
Well, yeah, that's true. I was a weird kid. I don't know if my peers were also sort of going to the library. I feel like my mom made it a regular thing of like, let's go to the library. But she was, I think, big into supporting a lot of that stuff in Reading. And, she's liberal parents. She likes libraries. She wants to bring us someplace so we
my mom was an English teacher, so
yeah, and we liked libraries too. There's books there. We liked to read. It's good stuff.
Right. That's a weird decline, a sad decline for the library to go from a couple of months ago. I saw some like news article about library employees taking Narcan around in order to like Narcan the junkies on the lawn if they knew and stuff, and it's like it went from like this pillar of like human intellectualness, and then it became like a punchline about masturbating homeless people. It's like, which I like a good masturbating homeless guy joke, but not at the expense of the library.
I have mixed feelings on that because I think it is sad. I agree with that, but also like that's not the library's fault. About the homeless people. It's not even really the homeless people's fault. It's the fault of other
librarians,
big abstract systems.
Yeah.
Well, the library is and should be one of the last places in society where you can go without the expectation of spending money. Like,
that's true.
That is a good and valuable thing for it to be. And the only problem, as far as I can see, is that there aren't more other places like that. So, like, homeless people hang out at the library, not because they're really into books, although some of them are. They hang out there because literally where else will they go? It's
and it's
99
government land,
degrees
and
out.
therefore
Like,
different laws apply to it, and so on and so forth. Right.
yeah,
So, yeah, I don't know. Sad. Missed the
it
library.
is
When I was a
sad.
kid, we
Yeah.
used to rent VCRs and videotapes like that. This was before video stores. I'm this old. I'm so old I used to drink from a hose as a kid. But so these video stores, you're not on Facebook, you don't even know. There was no video stores. Or at least they were few and far between. So we would actually get the VCR from the library, and I would get like Merry Melody, black and white Merry Melody cartoon on VCR and watch them, and I loved it.
Yeah. Well, the good news for you about, well, I guess you aren't in Reading anymore, but the good news, though, is that libraries haven't gone anywhere. They're still there. There's just more homeless people, and it's like they're not going to hurt you. So you can still go and enjoy the library. You just might have to look at someone who's very poor.
Right. Well, the downfall of books didn't help, and I mean,
Yeah.
So, I have so I'm also by this fire. I mean, might as well take up as much time with absolute nonsense as possible. There's this fire over here, and every time fires go on, everybody likes to blame the homeless for the fires and stuff. And so Terry and I have this sort of like fantasy rolling of this underground railroad of the homeless that go out in the middle of the woods. They hike like 150 miles out there in order to start fires and then come back, and it's like a pilgrimage for them.
Just this underground of anarchist homeless arsonists.
Yeah.
Setting forest fires.
People are just, it's probably the homeless. It is 150 miles out there.
That's funny. I haven't actually heard it's probably the homeless angle before.
What, are you serious?
No, I haven't, but also I don't listen to or interact with the type of people who will say that kind of thing. So
what are you saying about me? What are you trying to say?
Well,
standards?
You're an adult with a range of, professional contacts and people in your life who you can't just like shun.
I didn't know you had to be so mean. Truth hurts, Karen.
You're an adult. Yeah,
you're an adult with a professional contact. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah. So you got to put up with these people, and so did I when I was.
When you were part of society.
When I was part of society, but now
tuned in and dropped out.
Exactly. Now I don't have to bother.
All right.
But
we got one more news article.
Yes, we do. And this is an important one. A Florida man attempted to break into the Patrick Space Force base, not Air Force, Space Force in Florida to warn the people there about. Let me get the quote because it's a good one.
Kelly.
To alert the president that there were, quote, U.S. aliens fighting with Chinese dragons.
Okay, well, for one, this shows that the Space Force has finally grown beyond its like Trump connection, because this guy thought that the Space Force would be a good way to get a message to Biden. So that's good.
Right.
Unless he still thinks Trump was the president. So that's a possibility in this story that has been left out. I have to say this now. This is controversial with my people, with the liberal people, and that is the Space Force. To me, was the least stupid thing that Trump came up with.
Yeah,
I thought it was a good idea. I'm just why wouldn't you do that? I mean, look what's going on with the Chinese now. The Chinese, they take really bad care of their stuff. It keeps falling from the sky. It's like
hitting the moon.
Right. Are we maybe getting blocked from the reports that are going out all across the world about all our stuff that's fallen on everybody else? I mean, it's possible. Are we getting wagged the dog on our Chinese space junk?
See, we don't have state media, so I think probably not. I think most of our media is perfectly comfortable criticizing the government.
But I do have to say, going back to the Space Force, I think the Space Force was a good idea. And I think this crazy went to the right place with this crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually agree with the Space Force. you hear a lot of criticism about it being sort of unfocused, or it's unclear what the mission is. But I think to me, that's just something that's true of any new agency. Like any new sort of organization it's going to take a little while before they establish specifically what they can respond to, what they're good at responding to, specifically like what sort of procedures they have. That stuff all takes a while. The Supreme Court existed for, I think, like 30 years, 20 or 30 years before they had judicial review. And before that, they weren't really doing much. It was kind of just a bunch of random guys who the president appointed because they were friends.
Oh,
just
Space
kind
Force.
of like hanging out. Right. Yeah. And that's the Space Force now. But I think eventually it'll be good to have something like this. That said, I'm not super familiar with. I've definitely heard some criticism also of like, okay, but this just like duplicates a bunch of existing, work that other people are doing, or just kind of takes it away from them and gives it to this new force, which maybe that wasn't necessary. I can't really speak to.
I got a retort to that.
I don't know.
I got a retort to that argument though, and that is when you have a functioning machine and you want to replace a part of it, you want another machine to take over part of what this machine does. That doesn't happen all at once. You keep this machine going while you build this machine, and then you alleviate this machine by plugging this one into it. That's the way machines work. You can't everybody's so caught up on money that, for one, everybody who's concerned about government spending, don't get mad at the government for where they spend their money. Get mad at them for how much they pay for it. You'll get much better results if you focus on that, I'm guessing. But, we have to keep the machine running. Of course, it's going to cost extra to upgrade. I mean, it always does. We're capitalists, man. Everybody out there, you're capitalists. You know how this works. Costs money to upgrade. What are we talking
about? We're talking about making new agencies.
Oh, but, Space Force.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about something similar the other day with regards to not the Space Force at all, but with regards to the police. Because, I've been reading a lot about sort of the defund the police stuff and just like the police abolition movement in general. And there's a lot of interesting sort of history there. And it seems like a lot of ideas are sort of like, let's establish some sort of parallel organizations, right? Some parallel structures that you can have alongside the police, and maybe eventually, we can phase out the police a little bit and give some more responsibility to those.
Right, you'll still have emergency violence response teams and all the things.
Right, yeah. There's no form of police abolition. There's no form of defund the police that involves you calling 911 and someone just says, "Well, we don't do that." Yeah, that's not anyone's idea for how things should operate.
911 was sold to Dominic, so now
exactly. Yeah, can't help you with a stabbing, man. That sounds rough, but we can get you a pepperoni in 20 minutes.
Right. So a realistic way to defund the police, as they like to call it, I think it's a stupid. It just. When people boil down, we live in a world of people who don't look at the process and they just look at the end goal, and they want the end goal to happen immediately. So they give it a name like defund the police, which, okay, maybe that would happen 80 years from now, but we probably shouldn't call it that right now. What you should call it in order to help it is, let's take some of this responsibility off of the police and put it over here, which will better mitigate those situations as they happen. Will some money flow one way or the other as it happens? Yes, it will. But defunding the police is not really a realistic catch-all for what is going on here. Now, you might disagree. I'm happy to hear, but I think it's a terrible title. It's not selling anything.
No, I mean, I think defund the police has proven to be politically not the best term, to the extent that pretty much all the Democrats distance themselves from it. I will say though that it was a term that was designed basically for Black activists talking to Black people. And you know what? In those circles, it's an amazing term, right?
Oh, I get it in that context.
Like it plays really well there because they don't like the police because they keep murdering them. So, you know.
Well, also there's a massive amount of militarized funding going to their communities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, and there's a lot of Black communities where it's like they are over policed to an insane degree. And so I think, yeah, defund the police now, right now in those communities is a very reasonable idea because they are crazy overfunded right now. But that's not, I think, what white America heard. You know, that's not what suburban America heard because we are.
Well, that's definitely not what it turned into in the conversation. No. But I guess that can be said for everything once it's spun, right?
Well, I feel like Democrats very much either distance themselves from it or just like initially said, yeah, we're for defund the police, but defund the police doesn't mean defund the police. It actually means give more money to the police, you know, right. Which is never what like activists intended. No, they meant defund the police. Right. But politicians were like, oh God, what do I do? Because I have to be tough on crime, but I also don't want to lose Black voters because I need those. So like, what is my avenue now? Right.
and fundamentally, therein lies the problem. So I think I've been going off about this because of generalized just stupidity. I think I go through these phases where like once every 6 months I throw my hands up and think that we're just too stupid to continue to exist as a group of people. Because like it's really obvious what we're doing to one another. You know, I think it's really obvious. And so here we have this government where everybody's voice matters. And I like that. But we also have it where everybody thinks their voice matters in a way that it doesn't. Your voice matters for the vote, but it will take more than your voice to truly add to the conversation. You know, and so we have these politicians who now have to explain something to the lowest common denominator. But a lot of these things can't be,
there's a limit to how much you can dumb them down.
Denominator. They just can't be. You know, you can't, people will be all like, well, put it in a sentence that I can understand. And like, people are all, I can't put it in one sentence because it's bigger than one sentence, you know? And I understand people's want for that because we do have the flip side in society where like your taxes should be able to be explained to you in one sentence. There are certain aspects of life that probably should be minimized down to that. But when it comes to complex systems and stuff like that, it just isn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, I do know what to do, but it's difficult, right? Because it's activism. As I think we've been pointing out this episode, there are limits to what you can do by just getting up every 4 years and voting, right? There's a limit to what politicians can do. There's a limit to, first of all, our system of voting is not fair, right? Some people, get essentially, many more votes than other people do because of the Electoral College, because of gerrymandering, etc. Some people's voices matter a lot more. So for one thing, there's that angle where it's very difficult. But for the other thing, if you just say, eventually we'll get the right people in office and they'll fix everything, like you're going to wait a long time. So it's, in the near term, what do you have to do? You have to build movements. You have to put pressure on governments. I think Americans as a whole, and I think I'm guilty of this too, have a very poor idea of what activism is and how it works. And just because we aren't really taught that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We aren't. But we're taught maybe more than other people, but in a way that we take it for granted, maybe. But I was thinking, my response to this would be that the fix would be education and how education has been demonized. And I'm not saying the current education system, but education. And then you said activism, and I'm all, well, yeah, you would have to do activism for education. So obviously that comes first. And I think therein lies the line, and that is that activism itself isn't enough. The word isn't enough. We need a pinpointed, we need something that we can get behind and see results and make lowest common denominator explanations of the results, you know. But unfortunately, as people get smarter, you know, other people tend to get this "you think you're better than me" attitude or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I think the form of activism you have to get behind depends on sort of what you're talking about, right? So it's, you know, if you say we need more education, but the electoral system isn't delivering more education because it isn't delivering anything, then you say, okay, what's the activism we use to get there? So maybe like a teacher strike could work, you know, and in fact, I think that could be very effective. It's been used in the past. But, you know, organizing these things is always a struggle. Keeping these things going is always a struggle. Having the resources to do a teacher strike, always a struggle. But that's, you know, you have to pull together. But if you're talking about other issues, maybe like if you're talking about issues of I'm not paid enough to live in my city, right? Then the answer to that, I think, is more like form a union, right? And fight back, and you know, you've got to win the fight. You know, once you start forming a union, now you are in a war with the company who is going to attempt to bust your union. So it's you have to start the war, and then you have to win the war.
Right, and
that's always hard,
right? Because there's so much grayness,
yeah,
to navigate. So we're here at the end, so I will pose one question, and that is, if there was one thing that you think that could be done to best save the world, what would it be? One thing, one action. Don't say like fix the environment. Don't say fix the economy. We're saying like one laser focused action that you think would help fix the world.
Well, what does one action mean? Like how many people?
Like you know,
how many people can I get behind?
Some people might say
action?
Free education. Let's just keep it reasonable. Stuff like that.
Okay, so let's say I can have whatever I want on one issue. Is that what we're saying?
Basically, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. I think more democratic government.
More democratic government.
Yeah, well, everyone's vote matters, and, you know, everyone's vote counts the same. No electoral college, no gerrymandering, get rid of all of that. I think if you did that, then you would see rapid movement on a lot of other issues.
Well, mine would be free pizza.
Free pizza?
No.
Can I change mine? Yeah, I like free pizza too. Let's do free pizza.
If I had a starting point, if I had a microgranular starting point, mine would be free education from birth to 5 years old.
Yeah.
Now, if I had a larger one than that, it would basically, again, make sure that we, as the richest country in the world, we should be the number one most educated country in the world. And I'm not saying liberal educations and those schools and this, that, whatever you think education is, I don't care. Education, number one, we should be the smartest country on the planet solely because we have the luxury of being that. And we're not.
We're the richest. So the fact that we aren't the smartest is telling.
Is right. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you can't do both, you're doing something wrong. I don't know. All right. Enjoy being stupid. You're listening to Radio Wasteland.